Good morning and welcome to the Soul Shop. I am your host, Phyllis King, and welcome. And today we have a fun guest, interesting guest, and I'm expecting some surprises. We've already been seeing some of those. Today I'm going to be speaking with medium, spiritual teacher, energy worker, and all-around wise woman. Her name is Jennifer Rose, and she is a medium. Oh my goodness. Let's jump in. Jennifer, first, thanks for being here today and taking time.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always an honor, and I'm so excited to be speaking with you.
Well, I've been a fan of yours for so long. We're Facebook friends, and sometimes you're Facebook friends with folks, and you don't even know how you got connected or when or why, but you know you are. And I see a lot of your posts and things you're doing, and I'm like, gosh, this woman is amazing. She's really doing incredible work and really uplifting people in a powerful way. So I reached out to you to see if we could have this conversation, and here you are. So wonderful. Let's just dive in. Let's just get to it because this is fun. Okay. All right. So you're a medium, you're an energy healer, you're a teacher. You really have great philosophies about love and, you know, the way we need to show up on the planet. You didn't just pop out this way, did you? You came out of the womb and started spreading benevolence. What's your journey? How did you get here?
Oh, that's a good question. What I can say is, I was very sensitive very early on as a child. And so, and I know many spiritual people can identify with that because it can be a little difficult to fit in when you have a high sensitivity about you, because then people usually say, oh, you're too sensitive. That's real common. But I had this funny side of me, you know, this powerful side within me that says, oh, they're just not sensitive enough. So that was funny. So that kind of got me through. But yeah, I was always very spiritually inclined and sensitive from an early age, but I didn't really know what that was. But I also had a sensitivity for what I would say humanity as well that I didn't understand. So when I saw things on the news that were disturbing, I would get kind of upset and need to talk to my parents about it.
And how did they manage it? Or was your family already intuitive or psychic? Or, I mean, what kind of feedback did you get? Or was there religious identifications, or what was that like?
Yeah, we weren't a super religious family. I mean, we did have a little bit of that in our upbringing, but I think they just tried to work with me the best that they could. And help me the best that they could, encourage me to say, write a letter to somebody, something like that. But I was a little different. It's okay.
Thank goodness. So this was your early childhood experience, and then did it become bigger and bigger as you got into your teens, or how did that grow?
Yeah, when I was in my teens, I was pretty much living a normal life like everybody else, but I always had, I always had the spiritual inclinations within me. And so if there was, say, a TV program, it might've been on like the public broadcasting system or something like that, had to do with a psychic or a medium or something like that, I would always remember to watch it. And some of my friends didn't quite understand that, poked a little fun at me. But I would find myself frequenting like the metaphysical bookstores. And so it was always there. I just kind of kept it with me. But, you know, as you get into your adult life, there's a lot of, responsibility. And so it just kind of stayed within me until the right time. And then I just felt this really strong calling to finally go in and really do something with it in a more.
So was there an event, or it was just a feeling that grew inside of you? What was your moment?
It was really growing inside of me, and I would just feel the strong pull and found myself back into the metaphysical shops again, and seeing mediums work and seeing them on TV. And I knew I just had to do it. I just had to. So it was like my higher self was really just pulling me forward, even though there was, fear there, the human part of me experiencing the fear, but the higher self saying, nope, we're going that way. And so we did.
So when you reflect back, before we get into some of where you are now, but when you think back, were you already connecting to spirit, or you just weren't aware of it? Or when did you become aware that, like, oh, I'm tuning into something and I can do something? When did that become real? I mean, really tangible for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't think I knew I was intuitive, and there were times, like I said, when I was younger, where I would go get readings and they would confirm I was intuitive. But when I was being intuitive, I didn't always know that that's what I was doing. It just sort of came naturally. So having a conversation with somebody, I would find that, certain kinds of advice would sort of flow out of me and understandings would flow out of me. And I didn't really realize I was sort of being intuitive at the time. And there were a few times where a family member had passed where I would feel their presence.
You mean in your own family or someone else?
Yeah, where it happened a few times, but I still didn't quite,
So
make the full connection until later. I
I
look back
know
now
that,
and go, oh.
yes, I know this is an impossible question, but just humor me. So
Sure.
what does it feel like to feel someone's presence? I mean, it's just how it works for you, but to someone just,
Yeah.
watching, they're probably like,
It actually feels so beautiful. I love being connected to spirit. I absolutely love it. I do not have I do not have people's loved ones visiting me on a regular basis unless I'm working with them. That's just not as much of a thing as people think it is. But I always feel my guides around me. Very consistently. And so I absolutely love it. When spirit connects with you, they're coming from a place that's not in duality anymore. It's a place of love. And so when you feel them connect, you just get this like flow of love around you.
yes.
It's absolutely magical.
Oh,
It's one of the reasons I love mediumship. Yeah.
that's so
And
beautiful.
yeah.
Now, would you say a little bit about what you mean about duality? Some people may want to understand that more clearly.
Yeah. So in our physical reality, living in this world, we experience light and dark. And what I mean by that is we have experiences that are challenging and we have experiences that are really fun and uplifting, and they all kind of go together. But in the end, love and beauty always comes out of everything. So that's really our connection to the spirit world. It's not a far off place, but in the end we see, oh, I went through this hard time, but I feel who I am now. I see how much I've grown and changed, and I see what I've learned from that. So now I understand, even though it was really, really hard, really, really, so these are journeys into the soul. So what we look at is, good and bad, or light and dark. It takes sometimes a deeper understanding and examination, but so many people often will come out with so much more maturity and growth and compassion within them after they've been through difficult circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so beautiful and so true. You have a great way of just sharing it so people can receive it, just so very accessible. That's one of the things I really appreciate about you. Okay, so you're going to the metaphysical stores. I mean, it doesn't really matter what age you went into it, but a point came when you hung up your shingle at some point, or did you hang up a shingle, or you just started doing it for people, or you couldn't escape it, which is what happens to most of us.
Yeah, I actually started just taking classes, taking classes and workshops. So one of the first things I did was a James Von Prague workshop with Lynn Prober. And, of course, he's one of the pioneers in American mediumship. And so she's an excellent medium over in the UK. And so that was a beautiful start, and just started my development as a medium on a regular basis. Took healing classes, had my own, spiritual growth within all of that. And so it's been an exciting journey and adventure.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And to be able to work with such people who have such confidence and certainty about the work, and such respect as well in the community. Okay. So, well, let's get into it. I mean, have you had other careers? Have you done this simultaneous to other careers? How did that all fit in? How did you evolve?
Yeah, I did have other careers and brought up my family, but it wasn't until there got to a point where everyone was, I'm going to say, independent enough that, that sort of part of my life was in a place where now I had the time to devote to my own personal spirituality. Yeah.
Well, and it's such a huge ordeal to put your sensitive self out there in the world and to express these realities and these forms. And and I think that we have to be ready, that we really do need to be solid in ourselves. And you had other things you were doing, but at some point you did feel time's now. So tell us about your business. And business is such a small word. Your practice. Tell us about everything you do and what your mission is, and what happens in your world.
Thank you. I do a whole bunch of things. I work as a medium, so I work with clients one-on-one, giving readings to them, helping them to connect with their loved ones. They often like to come through and give, helpful advice to the people who are here connecting with them. And it's so healing and beautiful to be able to do that. It's honorable work, I have to say, too. And then I do work as a healer. I work very closely with spirit to offer healing to people who are looking for that. I teach classes. So with teaching, I'm teaching mediumship development, healing, spiritual development as well. So I work with people who, because I was very sensitive, I like to help the other sensitive souls and people who would call themselves empaths to really learn to understand their energy and become empowered within themselves. And give assistance also to people who are going through the spiritual awakening process, because that's, a lot of people don't know how to navigate that. So those are kind of all of my things that I do. I run a spiritual service once a month, which I love doing. So I have different speakers and mediums on, and I can use my work to help give back to the world. So that's
so beautiful.
My humanitarian work is important to me as well. So I'm always trying to find ways that we can give back.
See, this is why I admire and adore you so much. You're the real deal. You're authentically out there trying to make a difference in the world. I know everyone wants me to talk about mediumship. I know. I'll get there. But I'm just curious about the inner workings of everything. So someone comes to you, well, I guess we'll dive into it. Someone comes to you for a session on mediumship. Is this something, tell us how it goes when someone comes to you, then we'll talk about if people can do it for themselves or not.
Okay. So when somebody comes to me and we're in a session together, we'll just chat for a little bit just to kind of make that connection. And then I just move myself into a different space. I move my awareness to a different space. I'll wait for one of their loved ones to come to me. And then I'll just begin to describe what I'm getting for them. Yeah. And it shows up to me in feelings and pictures. And words in my mind's ear as well. So the clairvoyance and the clairaudience and the clairsentience, and sometimes you just know it and you're just like, I don't know how I know this, but this is what I'm getting. So it's a lot of fun.
Can you share perhaps a story of someone you had a session with recently, or, something that happened, or, something that stands out in one of your experiences, just to give us an idea of what it looks like when you connect for someone?
It's what's really beautiful is when you're able to kind of bring through what I want to call the story of the person, of the loved one who's coming through. They come through with their story, and in that they'll be showing parts of themselves and the different parts of their personalities of how they were here. And so hopefully they're, if they had a sense of humor, that will start to come through. If they had special hobbies, they were passionate, that could come through, or a lot of the memories that people had together will come through. Sometimes there's certain mementos, like they handed down a watch, or there might be a special song that's connecting the two of them. And so hopefully those things will come through too, because sometimes people who are getting a reading, they're hoping this one little piece, will come through. So it's always so exciting for us when we can deliver that, for them.
When you say us, do you mean me, myself, and I, or do you have an intangible posse? I mean, what?
For mediums, yes, when we're able to deliver those special pieces that the person was secretly hoping for, and and then they say, yes, I was hoping hoping my grandfather would mention that watch or that book. You're like, oh, I'm so happy I was able to get that for you.
And so you do the one-on-one, but you also do groups, and I think see you show up at church type, spiritual church types.
Yeah.
Are you only on the West Coast, or do you travel around at this point? Or COVID, I know, but how does it work for you at this point?
I'm doing everything online over Zoom right now, but the beauty of that is you don't have to hop on a plane. You can connect with all of these other countries and with people that you wouldn't have had the opportunity to before. Even with my service pre-COVID, people would be driving distances, and now they don't have to do that. It's like you can just be wearing your pajamas and come on, not for the ones who are working, but
from the bottom down.
Yeah, for the people who are attending. And so that has been a gift of connection to each other in different parts of the world. Yeah. That has been a beautiful gift. Yeah.
So you already talked about some of the misinformation about mediumship, like there, kind of, we have the Whoopi Goldberg version and Ghost, where the room is flooded with entities trying to get in to talk to her. But you're saying for you, unless you're on the job connecting and saying, yes, office hours are open, you're not really doing that. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. It's just not a thing for me. I have had people come to me and say, oh, I feel like I'm getting approached by a spirit, and, but in a public place, for example, and I don't want that to happen. That's pretty rare. There might be a learning experience, and I'm just let them know, nope, not right now. And Spirit's very respectful. It just doesn't happen too often. It really kind of depends. Some mediums might be open to a little information or a little visit prior, but I just don't do it. It's just never really been an issue for me. So unless there's some kind of emergency, then you would, ask the person's permission,
So I know a lot of times, in fact, I can think of someone right now who, her mother passed a little over a year ago, and she's thinking of having a session with a medium. And what's the best way to come at a session when it's been someone who's been so profound for you, like really close to your mother, not a negative relationship, a positive one? And, what's the best way to come forward in that situation?
For the person who's going to be receiving the reading?
Yes.
Yeah. So the best thing to do is just kind of be open to whatever comes, because we can't guarantee who's going to come through. So there is a trust. There has to be a trust of the spirit world that whatever is right for you in that moment will happen. So that said, when people have a very special person they want to connect to, the spirit world will try their best to make that happen for them. So
that's fascinating. Yeah, that's fascinating, because that's probably another piece of misinformation people have. They think you can just pick up the phone and say, come in, are you here yet? So how do you know? I mean, I know these are really tough, ridiculous questions, but I'm going after it as best I can. So how do you know when you've made the connection? Or, does it happen very often that you can't connect to someone that the other person really wants to hear from? And if so, is there, it's because the information isn't ready to be received, or it's just not the right time, or how does that all work?
Yeah, if for some reason they don't come through, the person that you're hoping for to come through, then there's probably a reason, like in the timing of maybe when you're ready for that. So perhaps, you're meant to, you're on a journey of your own, and perhaps there's another medium down the road who's meant to make that connection. But for now, connecting with this person is what you need right now first.
I see.
So we don't always understand the bigger picture, but usually from my personal experience, they usually come through. The person that they want usually comes through, but we just kind of say we can't guarantee it.
Yeah, you're working with the universe, the entire universe.
Yeah,
It's kind of vast. It's a little bit bigger than the here and now. Okay, good. And so are you currently accepting new clients? Can people come and still see you, or do they have to go to a group event?
Oh yeah, I accept new clients. So they usually just contact me through my website, and we just set up a time that works for them. And then I do my group events as well. So people have an option of how they can reach me.
And so it's mediumjenniferrose.com. Is that right? Okay. And then
Yeah.
of course you have great Facebook, and we're linked. If someone can't find you, they can find you through my friends page or something like that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share about mediumship that you think people should know, or the benefits, or what to expect, or false information, or anything you think is important for people who've never had a session or think that you're the work of the devil or something like that?
Okay. Well, that's a big question.
I try.
Well, this is what I'm going to say. Mediumship has been around since the beginning of time, and many of the people who we would look up to in history of having brought through, you know, divine wisdom, they received that information because they had that connection. And the spirit world is a place of love. It's heaven that we're talking to. It's a place of love. And so that is the bridge between the two realms. So without that, it just wouldn't work without the love. And so that's why it's so important to come through with an open heart, you know. And so for me, when I'm connecting, it's like I'm holding a loving space for the person who's receiving. You know, they may have a lot of grief within them. They may be receiving an apology from a loved one who, now that they've crossed over, has realized, oh, I didn't realize the consequences of my actions until now that I've passed. And so, you know, so there's a lot of delicate things. Sometimes, you know, people passed in difficult ways, you know, so it's about loving space. And so I'm feeling that, you know, the loving space for my client, but also for the loved one that's coming through me. I'm not scared at them at all. I know they're coming from a divine space. So I'm just so happy, like, yes, come close. Let's have a conversation. Tell me about yourself. Tell me your story. And that's what life is. We all have a story to tell. Everybody wants to be heard, and that's their legacy. So that's their moment to be able to talk about themselves, tell what they've experienced, give any guidance they want to for the person that's here receiving, give their messages of love and let them know they're okay. Because so many people who are receiving the reading, they just want to know their loved one's okay, not in pain anymore. Do they hear my thoughts that I'm calling out to them? You know, was that really them in the dream, you know, that I had last night? And it's like, yes. You know, so it's a really beautiful responsibility in this kind of work, and it's very, very healing. So I absolutely love doing it. And if anybody's feeling the call to explore that, you know, I just say, remember, we're all spirit. We all have the ability to connect because we're spiritual beings having this human experience. That's something most spiritual people have heard before, right? So what does that mean? That means we're not disconnected from our soul. We're not disconnected from our higher power, God, source, universe, whatever you would like to call it. It's all part of us, moving through us and within us. So of course we can connect. Of course we can do it. And even people at home, they don't want to become mediums, but they can, you know, they can learn to quiet their mind, meditate a little bit, and they'll find, oh, I'm starting to feel that connection more. And it's so beautiful. Yeah.
Well, one of the things it's really striking to me about you is your vibration. You and I can talk vibration. You feel like better. I mean, your energy does feel so loving and compassionate. And I could see why anybody would want to sit in your lap and just have you hold them. I mean, that's really remarkable, and that really ties in. I mean, that's your natural state of being, that I guess you've always been this way, on this vibration, just really benevolent. No, you were an asshole before. Okay.
No, I would say that I've always been human too. So it's not like I've been Miss Perfect my whole life. You know, I've always been a human being as well. And so, but I can say I have always been sensitive to people and caring about people. So that's been really nice. I've always been a nurturing person. So I can definitely say that. But what I would add is, through my journey of spirituality and developing myself as a medium and a healer, I have become even closer to my spiritual self. I've become even closer to my spiritual guides, and I've grown a lot and matured a lot. So I think that's helped me to sort of reach the point that you're describing.
Well, I can
Yeah.
just see, I don't know. I am a psychic. You probably know that, and it's different than mediumship for sure. And just noticing the difference in our vibrations, and that's probably one of the things I admire the most about you, being able to be that way. So back to the mediumship temporarily. So I mean, you're talking about divine realms, and that's what you're tuning into. And I guess that's what you're open to. So you don't necessarily tune into any malevolence when you go to those realities.
Yeah, so personally, and I know different spiritual mediums have different belief systems in regards to this topic. I don't believe in bad spirits or evil spirits. It would take me a little time to give that explanation of why, but once we cross over, again, we're not in the realm of the duality anymore. We're in the realm of divine oneness, I want to say. And so when people cross over, when the people pass, there's a few different things that happen. They are still them, so they retain the parts of their personality that are their essence, but they no longer retain the parts that say were not who they really were. Okay, does that make sense? So
Yes.
there's a healing that happens because they are shifting from one state to the state where they're connected with their higher self, their soul self again, right?
Right.
And so there's been a healing that has happened. So any things they may have done wrong, they do become aware of that. They do take responsibility, and if they have an opportunity to apologize for that, want to do that, which I have had my guides tell me they encourage us to do the same here. Do it now before we pass over if we can, give that healing to people in the here and now if we can, and so I know they're always coming from a place of love. They've kind of been through that healing phase. They've been through the life review process. And so that it's just not really a thing. It's not in my belief system. So I've never had that issue, but to kind of explain why, for instance, when somebody passes, they don't pass alone. Nobody passes alone. We all have guides. We all have our guardian angels and our loved ones. They're going to be there when we pass. So they would never abandon us and leave us alone to, wander around. And it's like, and no one would. And I know some people think like, oh, I feel like something bad has come and hurt me or trying to think like that, but they would not abandon us here either. They would protect us from that. So it doesn't, when you start to think about that, you're like, oh, this doesn't make, kind of doesn't make sense. And so,
that's
not
very,
something I worry about. And we have to think also, that we have this concept of good and evil as part of our, what I'm going to say is collective culture going back in time, but it's still in the realm of duality. It's not in the realm of the divine oneness, which is, where we're off to when we pass as well too. So, and sometimes people are just having a spiritual awakening. And so their own soul self is helping them to, kind of integrate the light and the shadow. And that comes in a very symbolic kind of way. And they don't know that's what's happening. So they assume something external is happening, but it's all within their own internal self that's happening. And so that's another thing a lot of people aren't aware of. And then if they were to understand, oh, you're just going through a transformation and you're being offered an experience to help you integrate. And they go, oh, okay.
Well, this is really helpful for people to hear, and you say it in such an accessible way. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, sure.
And so we'll just take a little bit of a left turn here, just because these things are occurring to me. So you must have some points of view about whether or not we reincarnate and how long it takes to do that, if we're going to do it. And I don't know what, and what made me think of that is that you said, better to apologize sooner than later. And, does that automatically mean we're going to come back and have to have it out with that person and, solve that situation. What are your points of view about reincarnation, I guess?
Yeah. And so I'll give you, my point of view, and of course, what anybody wants to believe for themselves is okay. But I'll tell you sort of what I've experienced and what my guides have shown me as well is I would like to maybe say instead of past lives, because linear time we know is really an illusion, the linear time thing. So I would like to say shared lives. And so when we think of the soul, we have to realize it's bigger than our thinking mind can imagine. And so when we pass over or cross over, we will always stay us and continue to experience, that spiritual development within the spirit realm will always stay us, but that doesn't mean the larger part of ourselves can't be having another lifetime. So it's shared, but it doesn't mean that it's like recycled round and round. So in my in my view, it's a shared lifetime. So it's all connected, because if we think of oneness, when we remember, oh yes, we're all connected, everything's connected, but there is that individual spark of us that is eternal and that will get to stay eternal. So that's why, we could connect with ancestors. We might not be able to validate the information as well because they've been gone for so long and we didn't know them, but we could do that. They're still there. They're still there having their own divine experience. But I do say, like, if you can apologize and give that closure for somebody in healing now, do it, because you don't know if you'll have the opportunity to find a medium after you pass, because then it's up to, they're going to have to guide somebody here to go, right? And
exactly.
not everybody's open to that too. So you might not have the, and then of course it will happen once both of you have passed, then of course you're going to get that apology. You're going to get that, yes, I'm so sorry, for what I did. Please, please forgive me,
Right.
And of course, forgiveness is going to be a little easier because you're already in the divine space.
Well, because you are such a wealth, and your viewpoints are so grounded and balanced and spacious. I really appreciate that so much about you. Okay, so let's just you've really mastered this. Well, you have a high level of mastery in this realm, and I love that for you and for the people who get to be with you. And I hope everyone who reaches out to you understands that as they do reach out. So I guess I want to talk a little bit about your healing work. I mean, this is healing work. When you connect, that's healing work. But it sounds like you have another element that you do differently than just the mediumship.
So the kind of healing I work is actually a form of mediumship. So I began by studying Reiki, and I did all of the levels of that, and that's quite a beautiful system. There are, many beautiful systems of healing out there, and they're all beneficial and they're all helpful. But as I progressed in my mediumship, there's another form of healing. We would call it spiritual healing, or we would call it trance healing. And so that's when we're working directly with spirit. And so the medium has to do is then go into a deeply passive meditative state. And then they'll feel their, what we call healing guide, come and work very closely with them. And so they might actually, if you were, say, in person doing a healing, and had your hands, hovering above the person's midsection, the guide might move your hand for you. It's so beautiful. Oh my gosh, it's magical to have that experience of like, oh my God. It's so beautiful. Yeah. And so they're very much directing the process. What I love about that is like, oh, then you don't have to worry, am I doing it right? Or if I'm doing it wrong, am I in the right place? It's like spirit is doing it all for you. It's a very loving and divine experience. So I really enjoy doing that as well. And I love teaching my students how to do that.
And do you have other classes, other things you share, spiritual development, I think you said?
Yeah, so I'll teach classes for for the empaths and the sensitives, but that's always very good if you're a medium or a psychic or a healer, because it helps you to understand your energy more. And because a lot of people, may have some misconceptions about their energy that they're not aware of. So I love to be able to help them learn to become empowered with their sensitivity, and then it's also, they learn more about themselves in that too. And then I will do sometimes some workshops on spiritual awakening for people who might be going through that as well. And so, yeah, I keep
And
pretty
are
busy.
these all, when you create a class, I mean, you're so connected to divinity in an amazing way. You're so conscious of it. I mean, are these channeled classes, or these came from your own heart and just what you saw the need was out in the world, or how did they come to be?
Yeah, so I usually do receive a lot of guidance of sort of, we would like if you could put this together and we'll help you do it. And so I will definitely be receiving a lot of inspiration from spirit. So it's kind of a combination of what I've learned over time, and then also what they're giving me. So sometimes as I'm teaching, the flow just really comes out. And when I teach a certain class, it comes out a little different each time, because depending on who's there. So a little tidbit of information was meant for somebody in this class, and it's the second class, no one needed that. And so it's always, adjusts itself a little bit. So I do get a lot of help, which I appreciate.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. So what's happening for you now? What's on the calendar? What should people be looking out for? And you're in the Los Angeles area, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm in the Southern California
Oh, you
area.
do Zoom, so yeah.
Yeah, I do everything on Zoom now, so it's easier. So I think right now I do have a healing course coming up for people who are interested in doing trance healing, and it's not super hard. It doesn't require a lot of levels, doesn't require, hundreds and thousands of dollars to meet up. Just requires dedication and determination of working with spirit on a regular basis. I'll be doing a platform mediumship workshop coming up soon as well, for people who are wanting to do the group demonstrations, because that's a whole nother skill set of mediumship. So I love teaching platform as well.
You mean group demonstration, like when you get a group and you kind of pick people out of the audience or whatnot?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's super fun, but it is a different skill set. You have to be able to work a lot faster, and you have to, know some different techniques with that too.
Oh, that's
Fun though.
fascinating.
Yeah,
Wow.
because then everyone gets to witness the magic that's happening. But when they see somebody getting a message, everyone gets to see it happening. So it's really beautiful.
So you had mentioned some of the people you studied with. Was there anything remarkable, or I'm sure the whole thing was remarkable, but the people that you got your first training with, does something stand out that was really an aha moment for you, or that was special about that you'd like to share?
Oh gosh, let me think off the top of my head too. I think for me, those, the very beginning of my development is quite magic. And it is for many people, for when you're first making that link with spirit and you're feeling them come really close, and you'll get kind of this, for many people will experience this sort of champagne tingly bubbles of love and wave that come over you. And it's so beautiful. And I've seen other mediums, and it's like when you sort of make that first thing, that you're just like, oh my gosh, did that really happen? So that's the beautiful part of making those first connections. And and every time like you get something new and you figured something out, there's a definite learning process, and you have to be okay with making mistakes as you're developing, and learning. So, and there's a lot to be learned from making those mistakes as well too. But yeah, that was really, really beautiful. Yeah.
That sounds incredible. So you live in the world, there's a lot going on, and it's challenging for so many people, and people who don't have advanced spiritual awareness, I think, struggle much more. So what do you make of where we are historically? And I know this is like really putting your feet to the fire, but what do you think we're going through on the planet historically? And do we have hope, or should we all just pack our bags? What do you think?
We always have hope. We absolutely always have hope. And there's always going to be difficult challenges that we go through in our own personal lives, and there's always going to be challenges that the world goes through too. So that's sort of like the higher perspective, but there's always learning and growing and evolving that comes out of that. So that's the higher perspective. And we have to remember we're never alone, right? Spirit's always helping us. And this is why we have evolved. If we look back a few decades, look how far we've come. So that's an important thing. Looking back is a good thing, because then you see how far you've come individually and collectively. We really are evolving, but it can be disheartening sometimes to see very specific things that are going wrong or badly that you wish didn't happen. So, and that can kind of fall into two categories, because if we have our own belief systems of how we think things should be run, and we don't like how they're being run, then we have to kind of come to terms with that within ourselves. And so I like to tell people, you don't have to agree with what somebody else is doing or what they're believing. But if we could recognize the divine spark in everybody and have that, and, have a love and prayer instead of maybe going into judgment and anger so much, could that create a different reality? Or, could that, create more love? Love is something that infinitely multiplies. So if we can work towards that, it's not easy, but if we could work towards that, I do think that would help send to prayer and love instead of, so much kind of condemnation, and on a world level, that can be really difficult, because as you know, I do my humanitarian work, and my focus is on, I would say, people who are disadvantaged. And there is a lot of excitement within the spiritual community about the new age coming and the feminine vibrations coming in, and all of that I do believe is true. But at the same time, we have to find that balance of maybe wanting to save the world and having it overtake us, but then on the other side, it's, I don't want to look at it, it's too painful, so I'm going to just stay in my own little world. In between that is, let's be willing to take a look at whatever we can handle, even if it's a small thing at a time. Read a little story, look at an article, something like that, and become a little bit more educated to the things that are happening in the world, because there is still a lot of suffering. Slavery still exists in this world, and it's very sad. And I know people, to use that word, it's difficult, but people are forced into labor, or they're forced to marry young, or trafficking, those things like that, they're a real thing. And if we can find that balance, to where we say, okay, I know this is a problem, this is what I'm able to do. Maybe it's a volunteer, maybe it's a donation, maybe it's just a prayer, but a prayer is still a loving vibration. That's a beautiful gift as well. So whatever we can do is important, because added up together, all of those little things really do make a difference. But I do think from what Spirit's saying is, if we can still be willing to, my spirit guides of what they say, be willing to look at the issues and try not to do this, because everyone needs to be seen and heard. Everyone needs to be known and counted. So in that, in the understanding, okay, this is what's happening in our physical reality. Okay, it's painful to watch. It's painful to know about, but how can we grow from this together? And if we can come together, even little groups of people could get together, what a difference we could make, and the spiritual community, I always say, is very diverse, very specialized. There's so many beautiful things that, you could get into. Maybe it's astrology, maybe it's the tarot, maybe it's mediumship, maybe it's healing. But if all of those people could come together, there's a lot of spiritual people out there these days, more and more people are kind of waking up to that side of them. All of those people could start really coming together, still have your individual thing going on, but how can we connect with each other for a higher common good? What a difference that would make. And so I really think that way, that's how we can make it happen faster, come together, work together, and acknowledge the people that need help, give them a prayer, send them some love. just takes a minute.
Beautiful. Well, see, this is what makes you so remarkable. You walk the walk, you talk the talk, and you're serving people on so many levels. And I appreciate that so much. You're a gift and a pleasure. And thank you, Jennifer Rose, for being here today. I just really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always an honor, and I appreciate you inviting me onto your program. So